Next up, we have Maul Shadow Lord Season 1. Last year, I traveled out to Star Wars Celebration in Japan, and to be honest, it wasn't necessarily the greatest Star Wars celebration I've been to, but there were some highlights, namely the animation panel with Dave Filoni in it. When we get to the end of that panel, they blindsided us by revealing the trailer for Maul Shadow Lord. And so I gotta say, like, everyone in that room was super hyped for that show. I mean, the trailer was unbelievable. So I've had a lot of expectations of it doing well when they first announced that they were going to do this show. So this series takes place a year after Revenge of the Sith, with Maul right in the middle of rebuilding his criminal syndicate. At the same time, he's being investigated by the local authorities on Janix, which eventually causes the Empire to catch wind of his survival and to step in to capture him. And so, pacing wise, this show moves at an incredibly good pace. Every episode is engaging, and there's really no filler in this particular show. Good to see the no filler, because with 8 to 10 episodes, you really can't have filler. And so the narrative fleshes out 3 major characters. And so I think the first character that gets fleshed out is Captain Lawson. And he isn't your traditional character. He is a distant father who substitutes his lack of family involvement by burying himself into work as a police officer sheriff on Janix. And despite his droid companion repeatedly suggesting they call the Empire for backup to capture Maul, Lawson fiercely refuses because he wants the zero Imperial involvement on his world, which is quite interesting because this only takes place a year after Revenge of the Sith, and he's already scared of Imperial involvement, whatever they've heard about the Empire, I'm assuming. And so by the end of the season, he has this conversation with his son. It's kind of like his lowest breaking point, where he's forced to flee from the Empire, and he tells his son he wish he had spent meaningful time with him instead of being on the run from the Empire. So I found that very interesting. The next character is Devon. Devon is a Padawan. She and her master, Master Daki, are Order 66 survivors, Jedi survivors. And Devon's entire arc is really defined by survival. She adapts by breaking local laws and using the Force so that she and her master can survive and eat. And it's that desperate survival instinct that ultimately draws Maul to her. And so when a crisis forces Devon to rely on Maul's help, he actually shows up, and obviously for selfish reasons. But by the end of the finale, by the end of season 1, Devon is going to be consumed by rage over the death of Master Daki. And we're going to start to see that Devon turns to the dark side and choosing to train under Maul to grow stronger. And then there's Maul himself. Developing a character who is a known villain is kind of tough. And the show keeps him wonderfully manipulative, feeding Devon half-truths, protecting her while simultaneously betraying her master, but she doesn't know that. The real feat of his development comes when he's at his absolute lowest, when he's injured and he's fleeing from 2 Inquisitors. He put up a good fight. His mechanical leg was broken, and he experiences these hallucinations, seeing the little boy he used to be before and after Sidious raised, tortured, and betrayed him, while also reliving the death of his brother Savage Opress. And so this rock bottom moment forces him to rebuild his resolve. He becomes fiercely motivated to take Devon as an apprentice, seeing her dark potential purely as a weapon to achieve his ultimate revenge against Sidious. Now, the animation in Shadow Lord is top-notch. It's amazing to see how drastically Lucasfilm has upgraded its CGI from Clone Wars from the Clone War days to now. And so the sound is incredibly crisp. The real showstoppers are the duels. And if you scroll through TikTok, YouTube, if you get any of that in your algorithm, you're probably going to see some Maul duels or clips of Maul fighting the Inquisitors and the Darth Vader fight. And Vader arrives, completely demonstrates why he's the most feared Sith of all time. It's not just his lightsaber, the way they choreographed that, but it's the way and how oppressive he uses the Force and commands the Force. I mean, Lucasfilm's animation department went completely above and beyond with those duels, those fights with the Inquisitors, with Vader, with Maul, with Devon, Daki. Incredible. And so what grounds this show is how deeply it tackles the themes of shattered identity and purpose, What do you do when your entire identity is sort of erased? The Jedi are forced to live as runaways, they're criminals branded by the Empire as criminals, leaving them to figure out how to help people when they're viewed as outlaws and criminals. Maul steps in to show Devon and Dottie that they have to adapt to this new reality. He's been exactly where they are. Remember, Maul uniquely knew who Sidious was and had insight into his grand plan for the most part to an extent. And the show highlights that while we sometimes must adapt to survive, we also have to protect our core values. But as we know in Star Wars, intense emotion can warp those values, which is exactly what happens to Devon as she begins her sort of quest for vengeance. And so while the execution is stellar, I do have two main complaints. First, Maul simply does not have enough screen time. The runtime is kind of split between Lawson and Two Boots, Devon and Donkey, Maul and Rook, Maul and Devon. Second, because characters like Captain Lawson take up so much time and space, you need to properly flesh them out inside the show. And so right now, Star Wars is publishing a sort of prelude comic book to the show that sort of reveals Lawson was, a former bounty hunter, and fleshing out his character history is, important, but it's going to be done in the comics, not in the show. Do I think you need to read the comic book? No. And to be honest, I have issues with the way Star Wars and Disney and kind of handles the comic books, which is like they'll do one thing in the comic books and then the show does something else. So, read at your own, will. Don't think of it as canon. Think of it as separate, in my opinion. And so overall, I think Dave Filoni and the animation team knocked this show out of the park. There wasn't a single episode that felt like filler. Maul was a total badass. I was highly curious to see if Star Wars could pull off what DC did with the Penguin. You take a ruthless villain, making them the central protagonist, and then keeping them completely compelling from beginning to end. And for me, they delivered. I just wish and wanted a little bit more Maul on screen. And so for that, I give this show, Maul Shadow Lord, a 9.5 out of 10. Hey, if you liked that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. Really helps with the channel.